At the family dinner, my parents said, "Your sister deserves it." They gave her everything: the house, the money, the future. A month later, Mom texted, "The house payment is due." I calmly responded, "For 7 years, I've drained my bank account keeping my family above water. Dad's cancer treatment, $22,000 I didn't have but scraped together anyway. My brother Tyler's culinary school tuition, 3 years at $12,000 annually because he swore he'd become the next celebrity chef. Even the foundation repair after that flash flood hit their house, another $9,500 I pulled from my retirement fund. I'd even turned down a position in Boston, a genuine shot at the career I'd dreamed about, just to stay close when they needed me. At our Sunday dinner table, the oak one I'd refinished with my own hands and money, Dad set down his fork with that deliberate motion that meant a speech was coming. "We've made our decision," he announced, his voice carrying that tone of absolute finality. "The house, our savings account, everything. It's all going to Tyler. He deserves it for following his passion." The room tilted. Mom nodded, her eyes sliding past mine like I was invisible. "Tyler has such vision," she said, as though the last 7 years of my sacrifice had evaporated into nothing. "He needs this foundation to launch his restaurant." I gripped my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter. The words hung there like accusations. Tyler deserves it. All those sleepless nights reconciling their accounts, every weekend I'd spent untangling their financial disasters, every dream I'd buried to keep them standing, erased. They looked right through me, convinced I'd keep playing my role, the dependable daughter who'd pour her paycheck into their bottomless well of need. I wanted to scream. Instead, my silence roared louder than any words could. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at that table, feeling the weight of their betrayal crush down on me. They'd taken everything I'd given them and handed it to him like a trophy. Something fractured inside me that night. If you've ever been invisible to your own family, hit that like button and share this story. You won't believe what happened next. As the untouched pot roast cooled between us, my mind spiraled through every sacrifice. For years ago, Dad's cancer diagnosis arrived with a bill that could have buried them. Mom had called at 2 a.m., sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "We can't pay for his treatment," she'd choked out. "The insurance won't cover enough." By sunrise, I'd transferred every dollar I'd saved for down payment on my own place. $22,000, gone in a keystroke. No celebration, no acknowledgement, just a brief nod from Dad when he came home from his first round of chemo. He never mentioned it again. I told myself keeping him alive was reward enough. Then came Tyler's grand culinary dreams. He'd painted vivid pictures of farm-to-table restaurants and James Beard Awards, so I covered his tuition, $12,000 every year for 3 years. My own car payments barely fit my budget, but I made it work, believing he'd rise to something extraordinary. Instead, he'd coasted through classes, spent more time at clubs than in kitchens, and graduated by the skin of his teeth. His string of failed ventures followed like dominoes. A food truck that lasted 3 months. A catering business that folded after one disastrous wedding. A pop-up restaurant concept that never actually popped up. Each failure consumed his energy and their money, but I stayed quiet, writing checks to keep his dreams on life support. 3 years back, that storm tore through Denver with a vengeance, and water flooded their basement, cracking the foundation. Mom's panicked call came as I was closing a major deal at work. "The contractor says $9,500, she'd said, her voice breaking. "We'll lose the house if we don't fix it." I picked up overtime, worked late into every night for 2 months straight, and paid for those repairs. I still drive past that house sometimes, seeing those fixed foundation walls as monuments to what I'd surrendered. The deepest wound was Boston. A prestigious firm had offered me a senior analyst position, $92,000 annually, stock options, the works. A real chance to build something that was mine. I'd held that offer letter in my hands, reading it over and over. But leaving felt like abandoning them, so I called the recruiter and declined. I stayed anchored to Denver, to them, while my own future drifted further away. Each sacrifice had stacked up like weights on my chest. Late nights at my laptop, spreadsheets blurring together, I'd wondered when I'd get to breathe for myself. Dad's recovery, Tyler's degree, that solid foundation, I'd made all of it possible. Yet they never noticed. They never asked how I stretched my salary to cover their emergencies while my own savings account withered. Tyler would breeze in with stories of his next brilliant concept, designer sneakers on his feet, while I quietly paid their utility bills. Mom and Dad would light up at his plans, never questioning how I managed to keep sending money. I hadn't wanted applause, just one moment where they saw me. Instead, I got their silence, their assumption that I'd always carry the load. The math told a brutal truth. I'd given them over $70,000 across those years, hospital bills, tuition, repairs, while Tyler burned through cash on craft cocktails and weekend getaways to Aspen. I'd seen the credit card statements when Mom asked me to help organize their finances. Premium bottle service, luxury hotel stays, high-end kitchen gadgets he never used. I'd never confronted them, just kept quietly covering the gaps. My apartment stayed sparse, second-hand furniture, no vacations, no retirement cushion. But I'd convinced myself this was what family meant, giving until it hurt, until you were hollow. I'd released my grip on career advancement, on personal dreams, on my own peace of mind. All for them. They'd leaned on me with the certainty that I'd never let them fall. Tyler never offered a cent of help. He'd arrive with a new leather jacket, talking about meetings with potential investors while I covered their mortgage payment. Mom and Dad called him their visionary, their star, but never asked how I was surviving. I'd thought loyalty meant putting them first, even as it carved me out from the inside. Those years of constant giving had left me empty, my future fading with each dollar I transferred. I wasn't fully angry yet, but resentment had been growing, heavy and dark. I'd built their stability brick by brick, only to realize they'd never valued the foundation I'd laid. I couldn't keep giving everything for nothing. That Sunday night, their faces came into sharp focus. I sat in that Denver dining room, the weight of 7 years pressing down on my shoulders. Dad straightened in his chair, his expression resolute. "We've thought this through carefully," he said, his voice cutting through the clink of silverware against plates. "The house and our savings, they're going to Tyler. He deserves this for pursuing his culinary dreams." My breath caught, a sharp spike of pain driving through my chest. Mom nodded, her hands folded primly on the table. "Tyler has real ambition," she said with absolute certainty, like a judge delivering a verdict. "He needs this capital to open his restaurant. It's his moment." Tyler leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, as if he'd always known he'd come out on top. My pulse thundered in my ears, heat rushing to my face. The house I'd helped save, the savings I'd replenished with my own sacrifice, they were handing it all to him on a silver platter. I'd given 7 years to this family, and they treated me like a ghost. My fingers tightened around my napkin, crumpling the fabric. I wanted to shout, to demand why my efforts were invisible, but I bit down hard on my tongue. My silence became a weight in the room, heavy and suffocating. Dad crossed his arms, satisfaction written across his features. "Tyler's got real vision," he said, glancing at my brother with unmistakable pride. "He'll build something significant. He's got what it takes." Build something? I'd been the one holding everything together, but they couldn't see it. They'd never seen it. Tyler spoke up, his voice bright and sharp as a blade. "I've got serious plans in motion," he said, running a hand through his hair. "This is exactly the opportunity I've been waiting for." He didn't even glance in my direction, as if my presence in that room meant nothing at all. Mom reached across the table, touching Tyler's arm with warmth. "We believe in you completely," she said, her eyes shining with maternal devotion. Never once did she look at me. The air felt thick, pressing against my lungs. I thought of everything I'd surrendered: time, money, energy, my own career path swallowed by their constant needs. They had no idea about the nights I'd spent awake, worrying over their bank statements, the opportunities I'd declined to keep them secure. They didn't care. Tyler's dreams were just words, half-formed concepts that never materialized into anything real, but they'd crowned him their golden child. I was simply the one who'd made it all possible, the invisible support beam they'd taken for granted. My throat constricted, emotions churning inside me like a storm about to break. I could have stood up, slammed my hands on that table, let everything spill out in one explosive moment. But I stayed still, my eyes locked on the table's edge, that boundary between their world and mine growing wider by the second. They kept talking, their voices buzzing with excitement about Tyler's future, his potential, his vision. Each word carved deeper into what little loyalty I had left. I'd believed family meant standing together, supporting each other. Instead, they'd left me carrying the entire burden alone, then handed the reward to him. Tyler laughed, tossing out some vague pitch about a farm-to-table concept, while Dad nodded like he'd discovered the secret to success. Mom added, "We trust you completely, Tyler." Not me. Never me. I felt like a stranger in my own family, unseen and erased. I shoved my chair back, the scrape of wood against floor cutting through their conversation. "I need some air," I said, my voice low and tight. They barely registered my departure. Tyler kept spinning his fantasies. Mom kept smiling. Dad kept nodding his approval. I stepped onto the back porch, Denver's autumn night biting at my skin. Their words echoed in my head, "He deserves it. Deserves it. I'd given everything, and they'd given me nothing. Not acknowledgement. Not gratitude. Not even basic respect." Something shifted deep inside me then, a quiet break I knew I couldn't repair. I wasn't their safety net anymore. 2 weeks crawled by, and the betrayal festered like an infected wound. I met my old college friend Vanessa at a coffee shop in downtown Denver, her expression tense as she slid into the booth across from me. We'd known each other since freshman year, and she'd never been one to sugarcoat things. Today, her eyes carried a warning I couldn't ignore. "I heard about the dinner," she said quietly, leaning forward. "But there's something you need to know about Tyler." My stomach clenched, already bracing for impact. Vanessa's words came fast and urgent. "He's been hemorrhaging money, Scarlett. Designer clothes, trips to Vail and Park City, bottle service at those trendy clubs downtown, all on credit cards your parents don't know about. He's racked up serious debt, and it's secured against their house." I froze, my coffee cup suddenly heavy in my hands. Tyler's spending wasn't news. He'd always loved the flashy lifestyle, but tying debt to the house I'd fought to protect felt like a knife between my ribs. Vanessa pulled out her phone, showing me a screenshot she'd gotten from a mutual friend who worked at the mortgage company. It confirmed everything. Tyler had used their house as collateral for his debts without Mom or Dad's knowledge. Over $35,000 in high-interest credit card debt, all of it tied to their home equity. My pulse raced, anger mixing with disbelief. 7 years of keeping them afloat, and Tyler had gambled their home on bottle service and ski trips. I drove straight to Mom's house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight it ached. She was in the kitchen arranging flowers, looking tired but peaceful. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Did you know Tyler's been using the house as collateral for his credit card debt?" I asked, my voice steady but edged with steel. Mom's hands stilled, her face draining of color. "What are you talking about?" she said, but her eyes flickered with something that looked like suspicion she'd been ignoring. I laid it out plainly. Vanessa's warning. The mortgage company's documentation. Tyler's secret spending spree. Mom's hands began to tremble, but she shook her head in denial. "Tyler wouldn't do that," she insisted. "He's just trying to establish himself in the industry." I stepped closer, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Establish himself? He's risking everything you have. Why do you keep defending him?" Mom looked away, her jaw tight. "He's building towards something real," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "You've always been strong, Scarlett. You always figure things out. Tyler needs us more than you do." Her words cut deeper than any blade. I'd been their anchor, their reliable fix-it person, and they still chose him. Even now, with evidence of his recklessness staring them in the face. My chest burned. The mortgage company could foreclose. "Mom, did you even bother checking his story?" She faltered, her hands gripping the counter's edge. "We trusted him," she whispered. "He's our son." I wanted to scream, to shake her until she saw the truth blazing in front of her face. Instead, I pulled out my phone, showing her the same documentation Vanessa had shared. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, doubt crept into her expression. "How did you get this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Vanessa," I said flatly. "Someone had to tell me, since you wouldn't." Mom sank into a chair, silent, her face a mixture of shock and shame. I stood there, waiting for her to say something, anything, to make this right. But she just stared at the kitchen table, her hands folded, looking lost. The woman who'd praised Tyler's vision now seemed adrift, like the ground beneath her had shifted. I'd spent 7 years protecting this family, only to discover Tyler had endangered everything. My anger wasn't just directed at him anymore. It was at Mom, at Dad, at their blind faith in someone who'd proven himself irresponsible time and again. I turned toward the door, my voice low and final. You chose him. But he's the one sinking you. I walked out, the door clicking shut behind me, my resolve hardening with each step. I was done cleaning up their messes. 6 weeks later, Mom's text appeared on my screen. The house payment is due. We need help. I stared at those words, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. 7 years of being their emergency fund flashed through my mind. Every late night, every sacrificed opportunity, every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. I typed back slowly, deliberately, "That's not my responsibility." The words felt like a blade, sharp and final, severing the cord of obligation that had bound me for so long. I'd silenced my phone after that, blocking their relentless calls. Mom's soft pleas. Dad's stern demands. Tyler's entitled accusations. Each unanswered ring became another brick in the wall I was building around my peace. My Denver apartment transformed into a fortress against their expectations. For weeks, I avoided their messages, letting voicemails pile up like debts I refused to pay. My life, once tethered completely to their needs, was finally mine to claim. One evening, a sharp knock echoed through my apartment. I opened the door to find Mom, Dad, and Tyler standing in the hallway, their faces a tableau of desperation, anger, and defiance. Mom clutched a folder of bank notices, her hand shaking as she stepped forward. "We're out of time," she said, her voice cracking with panic. "The mortgage company will take the house if you don't help us." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, my expression unchanging. "Tyler created this disaster," I said, my tone cold but steady. "He needs to fix it." Tyler's eyes flashed with anger, his jaw clenched tight. "You're betraying us," he spat, stepping closer. "We're your family, and you're just walking away like we mean nothing." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound harsh in the quiet hallway. "Betraying you? I've carried this family for 7 years. Every bill, every crisis, every sacrifice I made, and you handed everything to him." My words landed like punches, and his face flushed red. But he didn't back down. Dad moved forward, his presence imposing, his eyes searching mine for the daughter who'd always caved to their demands. "This isn't who we raised," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You're letting us fall apart." The accusation stung, a sharp twist in my chest, but I held my ground. "I've given enough," I said, locking eyes with Tyler. "Your mess, your problem." His lips parted, but no words emerged. His usual bravado faltered under my unwavering gaze. Mom's voice broke through, soft and pleading. "Please, just this one more time," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "We're your family, Scarlett." I scanned their faces, Mom's trembling hands, Dad's furrowed brow, Tyler's clenched fists. They weren't here because they cared about me. They were here for what I could provide, for what I'd always provided. My heart pounded, but not with guilt. With clarity. With certainty I'd never felt before. "Family doesn't mean I'm your personal bank account," I said, my voice firm and unshaken. "I'm done." I stepped back, ready to close the door, but Tyler lunged forward. "You think you're better than us?" he demanded, his voice rising with desperation. "You'll regret this when we lose everything." I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Tyler," I said deliberately. "You'll regret gambling their home on your lifestyle." His face crumpled, a flicker of fear replacing his usual confidence. Dad raised his hand as if to calm the situation, but his eyes stayed on me, heavy with judgment. "You're choosing yourself over us," he said, his tone carrying the weight of finality, like a verdict handed down from on high. I nodded, unapologetic. "Yes," I said. "For the first time in 7 years, I am." Mom reached out, her fingers grazing my arm, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said, my voice softer but no less resolute. You made your choice when you picked him. The air grew thick with their silence, louder than any argument we'd ever had. I thought of those 7 years, balancing their accounts, stretching my paychecks until they screamed, sacrificing my dreams to keep them stable. Every late night, every missed opportunity, every quiet moment of resentment had led to this. They'd taken my loyalty for granted, assuming I'd always bend. But I wasn't their anchor anymore. I glanced at the folder in Mom's hands, bank notices spilling out like evidence of Tyler's recklessness. "Call the mortgage company," I said, my eyes fixed on Tyler. "Figure it out or face the consequences. I'm not your escape route anymore." He flinched, his hands balling into fists, but he stayed silent. His confidence had evaporated. I closed the door, the click echoing in the stillness. Their voices lingered outside, muffled, persistent, pleading and accusing in turns. I walked to my window, the Denver skyline glowing against the dusk, a reminder of the life I was reclaiming. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail, probably Dad's stern lecture or Tyler's entitled demands. I didn't check. Instead, I sank into my couch, feeling the weight of their expectations lift from my shoulders. My pulse steadied, replaced by quiet freedom. I'd spent 7 years giving everything, only to be sidelined for Tyler's empty promises. Now I was choosing myself, and it felt like breathing freely for the first time in years. The next month, whispers started circulating. I noticed first at the grocery store, where neighbors I'd known for years suddenly looked away, their hushed conversations trailing behind me. By the following week, my inbox flooded with messages from acquaintances asking if the rumors were true. Tyler had taken to social media, painting me as the villain, a heartless daughter who'd abandoned her family in crisis. His posts accused me of turning my back on Mom and Dad, letting them lose their home. My throat tightened reading his twisted lies. But something unexpected happened. The truth came out. A local news blog covered the foreclosure, and details of Tyler's debt emerged. His lavish spending, the secret credit cards, using their house as collateral, it all became public knowledge. Neighbors began questioning the narrative he'd spun. People who judged me started reaching out with apologies. The house was eventually sold to cover the debt. Mom and Dad moved into a small rental across town. Tyler left Denver entirely, reportedly heading to Austin, leaving them to face the consequences alone. Mom called once, her voice thin and defeated. "We are managing," she said, not asking for help this time, just stating facts. Dad never called. His silence spoke volumes. I didn't feel vindication, just relief. I'd started living for myself, evenings taking photography classes, weekends hiking in the Rockies, finally accepting a promotion at work that I'd previously declined because I was too busy being their safety net. My story taught me that family shouldn't require you to erase yourself. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's survival. Love shouldn't come with an invoice. If my story resonated with you, share your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? Thanks for staying with me until the end.